Alright, guys, we're back for a little bit, and I'm going to try to run some audio. Okay? I don't know how this is going to read out, but we'll give it a spin. This is some rewriting and some re editing of a segment we did. Welcome to Northern Ergoth, meeting Astrid Damaris, little stuff like that. I'm going to run it out in a voice and see what it sounds like. Okay, let me see what I got to do here. Okay. I don't even remember what I put this on. It should. Hopefully. Maybe. I hope. Alright.
Meeting Astrid Damaris. Chapter 1. Welcome to Northern Ergoth. There are 3 possible ways into Northern Ergoth. Keep in mind that current world state around Ergoth means a significant section between Mt. Nevermind and Ergoth's southwestern coast leading on towards southern Ergoth are territorial waters contested by no less than 3 nations. Sailing too close to Mount Nevermind run the risk of gnomish automated cannonade, which cannot determine friend from foe, blasting a flaming volley into your ship. Stray a little too far south of that without proper credentials, and you get boarded by the Imperials looking to squeeze some tariffs. Or maybe the Sylvanesti impounds your ship thinking you are spies attempting your way to southern Ergoth, or Gwyn to attack the Emperor, and cause an incident, which will surely bring both of them to war. As always, the dragon armies also seek your head on a plate if they can get it. But up here in Northern Ergoth, the dragon army does not have the mobility or tactical advantages they do in mainland Ansalon. The Sylvanesti presence in Ergoth is confined to the imperial city of Gwynd, a handful of ambassadors who are under the strict protection, some speculate ransom, of Emperor Macadia Redic and his council. The Imperials do not trust the elves, and so they begrudgingly align themselves with the newly formed Sanchrist Embassy as a way of strengthening ties with Kergoth on the mainland in their support of Solamnia. The gnomes continue blasting out fireballs from the cliffs out into the sea, scaring off anyone stupid enough to enter Ergoth from anywhere but Gwynd or Manic. Attempting to stop at Hylo port might just make you a permanent resident when something takes off with your ship stranding you there. It's okay, Kender are friendly enough. After all, they got dumped here when a flying citadel crashed, and there are no less than 123 variations of the story. Ergothian Kender value politeness and courtesy over all things. Don't be mean to the animals. Make sure you share the things you brought with you if you can, and whatever you do, remember that everything in Ergoth is bigger and can eat you, and you would do well to advise your players of this if they decide to go outside the established settlements. Kender will not necessarily assemble to fight monsters outside of Hylo or anywhere else if they don't have to. Remember that unlike Ancelonian, Kender are good. Majority of the Kender here are either very old or very young. Most of them are not adventurers per se, but retired ones come home after a long time away on Wanderlust. Tanis and Laurana. 1. From Kergoth port aboard Maquesta Carthon's ship. Depending on your origin and destination, Maquesta will request that they stop at Manic. However, given its reputation as a pirate haven, and also inhabited by goblins, if you could ever consider goblins peaceful, most people are loath to enter Northern Ergoth from its southern tip of scrub brush and desert canyons. Here you will most likely already find Pez, an Astrid held captive, after Pez beat a human pirate in a feat of strength. The pirate chief is sore and won't let Pez go until he settles the bet, or they leave all of their belongings behind. Maquesta needs Pez, because he has access to smaller boats which can navigate around Ergothian isles without being harassed by the dragon army, saving much time if traveling by water. Caermorn, Palin, Justares or Dalamar. 2. Entering MT Nevermind Volcano and riding a balloon up, after traveling from San Crist and then floating to Northern or Southern Ergoth, ride a balloon to meet a gnomish airship and then sail to land in the imperial city of Gwynd, or even Hylo. This comes with risk of being attacked from the air by a wing of blue dragons, who are hiding within the southern canyons near Kermonth heading west to Lucid. Palin and Dalamar will be looking for the tower located somewhere on Northern Ergoth's southeastern tip. Tasselhof. 3. From Coastland Port to Hylo, somewhat uneventful, but Maquesta, or any sane ship's captain prefers to not stop at Hylo port due to not likely having cargo or crew left once the crew stop there to imbibe. Whole parts of docks connected to the shorelines along the river disappear due to the insane habit of gnomes and Kender to absent-mindedly borrow pieces of wood from them as well as the surrounding vessels. Unattended ships that slip anchor drift and crash either into the coastline or float just far enough into Hylo River's main inlet, the opening which is the first tier of Lukit Falls, causing some craft to drift toward Lukit Falls and end up debris once they go over the falls. They most likely get their ships stolen. Imagine they feel safer in Manic than they do Hylo port, wonder why. This is not a joke. Casual visitors fail to take this into account when docking at Hylo port. Remember that Hylo's capital citadel was stolen and sailed right into the Sentinel Mountains. Things get up and walk off around Hylo, even ships. Let's stop at Hylo, you said, it will be fun. 28 days later and marooned, because something took off with the ship. A very common occurrence especially around Hylo. At Hylo, Tars will first meet his mother or any of his parents, who will then mention Astrid to Tars and make introductions if they haven't met Pez in Manic, or Astrid earlier, at the Scriborium. It's been a few years, so expect Tasselhof to stay a few days, especially at Lukit Falls, where his mother took him on picnics there when he was a small Kender. Lukit Falls is beautiful and is a three-tiered waterfall, the top of which starts from the Hylo River inlet. This flows south and west down the Sentinel Mountains, although Lukit Falls itself is comprised of the river flowing through the base roots of an extremely large Ergothian tree-line root system half destroyed when the cataclysm hit. Evidence of this same root system suggests how the caverns underneath Hylo formed in some places, being the extension of the roots from the giant trees that once covered prehistoric Ergoth's shoreline, a terrifying concept picture of a cataclysm meteor slamming into a giant tree around since the Age of Dreams. The event for the Kender of that era would have been apocalyptic and devastating. The remains of the tree crashing into the newly formed ocean, what was left to burn away on the coastline, and stories told the fires didn't go out for almost 100 years. The cataclysm turned Hylo into a port town. Lukit Falls eventually regrew most of its fauna and tree line. Centuries of habitation by Kender as a prime swimming hole, and in the summer Kender of all ages can be seen on boats, canoes, rafts and floating barges on each tier of the waterfall. The top tier is most sought after, but space across the width of the creek fills up fast. So the bottom paths leading to each tier going down the mountain are filled with bustling Kender, some with half-wet clothes as they happily trudge back up the long paths, just to ride a barrel down again once they reach the tier they want. It should be noted that the way down is not always by feasible means. Kender will construct makeshift water slides, which will dump you out 100 feet into the water below with little hope of landing somewhere you can safely swim out of. Lukit Falls is beautiful, but dangerous in some places. The currents will rapidly pull you over the falls, and depending on the location on each tier the depth can get well over Kender, or human's head. A potential risk of drowning can occur for someone unfamiliar with the areas if crossing the weir or the creek line in bad weather. Fishermen set up traps and baits in certain spots, so it's advised to avoid places that might disturb fishing. Areas safe to swim vary with the crowd inhabiting each tier. A common Kender joke is which tier of Lukit Falls is best this year. The one that has the most trees around to hang your clothes on. The one that has the most Kendermaids about. The party could likely encounter Astrid de Morris at one of these locations. The first being the grounds of the old Hylo citadel at the Scriborium, aptly dubbed the University of Strange and Wonderful Things. This library, with multiple levels, is underground in Hylo citadel. The lowest level access are forbidden to anyone but those sanctioned to be there. A female minotaur named Liaison sometimes roams the grounds at night, a set of small lanterns swinging from her horns to illuminate her path among the labyrinth of books, scrolls, tablets, stone effigies, and millions of shelves tucked with all sorts of items. Most of these items, when inside the library, when picked up by a Kender, will miraculously disappear and reappear on the shelves. The library has several enchantments to prevent someone from walking off anything. Liaison the Minotaur. Liaison herself is a curious demi-human living amongst gnomes and Kender. Given the situation, she was not exiled from the Minotaur kingdom so much as volunteered as a diplomat for Northern Ergoth. She is very intelligent, for a Minotaur who can read. On Krynn, when half the common population is illiterate, is an exceptional thing indeed. She is the custodian of the library's main hall, and she is also the security. Her height and intimidating presence can deter most intruders. Liaison herself is not a typical Minotaur in attitude. She is very chaste, being a Minotaur makes her very ordered and dedicated to her tasks. She has the strength to lift and sort large tomes holding books. She's also an exceptional cartographer. Her collection on maps rival the most studious of Kender collections. It is known a Kender will often bring Liaison an old map, and if it's worth anything, Liaison trades the Kender usually a bauble or piece of junk they have fixated on while visiting. Astrid de Morris will journey to Balifor Common. After meeting up with rescuing Pez in Manic, she refuses to travel without Pez, so she will be hesitant to leave the Scriborium at Hylo Citadel until he returns. Once Pez is with her, however, she will gladly venture to Balifor Common. A party of PCs can persuade her to take them to Lukit Falls or Lagup, but she will not join any party for any length of time past the initial meeting without Pez being there. As an alternative, the DM can use Uncle Trapsringer or Auntie de Morris Metwinger, Lady de Morris Empress of the North, can be used to initially greet the party before sending them east to Hylo or south to Gwynd. Everything is being attended to by volunteers, or the San Christ Embassy. Treasures from the wreckage are scattered across Ergoth, and it's not uncommon to find a suspicious glowing doubloon in some weird language while digging in the dirt near there. Guests of esteem are usually asked to dine with the Trapsringers, which, to say their banquets, can be quite eclectic. Lady de Morris once served up part of a goatsucker bird loin to her human guests, nor realizing the human digestive didn't tolerate it well. She since stopped serving goatsucker meat and sticks to cakes, meat pies and pickled jam when human guests arrive. Ergothian Kender cuisine is particular, as the Kender must have some sort of cake and tea or bread, and a wine, beer, or ale, to accompany just about every meal. Kenders, like most halflings, eat about 3 or 4 times a day, if they can get it. Balifor Common in its current state is a plantation of adjoined walkways, houses and buildings built around the remains of a huge crashed spelljamming vessel, the back hull of which now sits embedded in the ground about 40 miles outside Gwynd. It currently just looks like a large snail shell with a bunch of steps and ropes hanging off it. The Kender had rigged platforms and scaffolding going all the way around the structure, both inside and out. Most of the ship's cabin is exposed to the elements, with the enclosed intact pieces being used as rooms according to their state of dryness. Astrid's parents, Dame de Morris Trapsringer, and her father, the legendary Trapsringer Furfoot, are in charge of the dig, as it were, at the site, and are currently living there and have been for several years. A curious thing to note, Trapsringer and Demoris both, after coming back from the moons of Krynn, started to leave an aftertrail of white dust wherever they walked or sat. The dust is harmless and seems to disappear inexplicably, but at times of night, when lunitary is full, the paths where they walk seem to glow. Astrid finds this novel because when she wants to find out where one of her parents are at night, she just follows the glowing moon dust to wherever she expects to find them. Nobody is sure why this happens, but it might have been due to their honeymoon on the moon long ago. Astrid tends to be somewhat reserved around her parents. Her mother picks at her and is a diva in her own right. Her father is somewhat absent-minded as of late due to being a Kender of advancing age. Uncle Trapsringer is still the oldest Kender in Kenderholm to have made the journey from Balifor to Ergoth 4 times, each time of which he will be glad to tell you in an extremely long, baroque many-layered saga, at which point you will fall asleep if you're luck to make it past the part where he shot an owlbear with his hoopak and felled it with one shot. Yeah, right. Mount Nevermind or Castle Gunther in San Christ. Anywhere outside of Ergoth Astrid will mostly stick out like a sore thumb in mainland Ansalon. Mount Nevermind will find Astrid moonlighting as a tinker helping the gnomes experiment with their new balloon. Astrid has one of 2 purposes, but it's up to the DM as to which role to use her in. To be fair to other players, if using Astrid or Pez as NPCs or PCs should bear in mind their stats are only there to accentuate a purpose, but the DM should stick to ONE. Even NPCs are not meant to be characters capable of anything. Avoid trying to make exceptional NPCs the Johnny-come-lately or Mary Sue that inexplicably solves every problem with a whiz-bang idea nobody else has. Despite their skills, Astrid and Pez have their flaws to accentuate their gifted talents. Pez is an island Kender with manners to boot and sometimes isn't that great at reading a map or writing a letter, but he can sail a boat, but he won't go near a grave site or anything having to do with potential undead due to a religious dictum preventing him from doing so, otherwise he would forfeit the protection of his own ancestral Loe. Astrid is intelligent, but she is also impulsive, impatient, and has the inexplicable inability to tell a lie. She can also per DM's choice use detect lie if she passes an initial charisma check with the person she is trying to detect the lie from. The detect lie is not automatic and must be rolled as well. 1. She can be an engineer helping at MT Nevermind or the Hylo Citadel under the San Christ Embassy, sponsored by the Chantry of Chislev. This will require you to modify her stats as a tinker/handler or cleric. Remember, as an NPC versus a PC, her role and skills will be under the DM's discretion. Under this guise, assume Astrid has been given permission to journey outside of Hylo, with Pez of course, to wherever she is assigned. She will largely collect specimens and catalogue recipes while she travels and then sends the reports back to Hylo as needed. 2. A cleric prefect under the Chantry of Chislev, but under these auspices Astrid is somewhat bound by the dictums of the Chantry and the rules of the Scriborium. She functions as an acolyte of the Chantry. This of course requires her to do the more prefect aspects of her job. She has to wear a set of robes, attend Mass. On occasion she is summoned to attend to priest duties such as tending to the sick, running errands on citadel grounds, or on rare occasions attending hearings. This can be anything from daily business to the reprimanding of criminals. An odd job Astrid seems to delight in. The Chantry has a wand that for all intensive purposes can detect lie once a day. A poacher was once caught on the trails and had injured a deer before getting apprehended by a guard hidden on the path. The offender was brought before Judge Cronin, and the elder Cronin brought in Astrid with the wand that time to ensure this human must not tell lies, or we shall have to smack his hiney with great zeal and temperance. Human, you have been charged with taking an arrow and missing one of our deer. Not only did you disturb our peace, you were a horrible shot, and as such we will ridicule you. mercilessly despite this. Stupid foolish bully human, what have you to say? Nothing. We shall smack thine hiney for telling lies. Do your worst, Kender. The ruffian scowls, more annoyed than scared of being tied to the stocks, and surrounded by angry Kender, who aren't too bashful about lobbing insults and rotten things at this human intruder who callously invaded their territory. Astrid huffs at the scowling human tied, with his hands and feet in the stocks, which are way too small for his form to begin with. Despite this, the poacher isn't going anywhere, as Pez has his head locked in his forearms, as if to imply it would be so easy to snap the human's neck. However, it is not within the Kender nature to kill an enemy already subdued, no matter how heinous the crime. Kender have been known to hand humans off to the authorities, who will gladly stretch the offenders' necks for next to nothing over the slightest offense. Poaching in other sections of Ansalon is a serious crime. The Qualinesti and Silvanesti will put a human to death, or disfigure them for poaching. So it's not an extreme. The Kender's form of capital punishment is a smack with a rod across the butt. The human offender looks up in bewildered surprise, as the Kenders drop his pants, and Astrid, with a squeal and harsh cry of absolute retribution, takes a running squeal across the cobbles, her little sabot shoes giving a clack asterisk, with a little wooden extending rod in her hand with a loop of threaded and braided sinew. Astrid's whippick flashes and makes a sound like a bullwhip, as she literally stops in a baseball slide and give the side of the poacher's pasty ass a resounding whack with the braided tip, drawing a spot of bruise with the lash and letting the momentum of the tip of the whippick crop bounce as she laid into his, but with 3 quick hearty whacks, before tucking her whippick back into the folds of her robe after making sure no blood was left. She bows toward the human with a curtsy, despite just bringing him to his knees in ragged gasps of pain. He can't fall to his knees, because H is strapped into the stocks, but a flip of the latch frees his arms just enough to let him fall back and wail in agony and rub his bruised ass. That's it. The bewildered criminal looks irritably at the Kender maid who just meted out his punishment. That's it. Human, once more we will berate you if you mock us. Show him we mean business, you silly fart gobble. You outrun our staves, you can jump into the sea. Get him. Smack his hiney. Poacher. You shall not poach on our lands. Come back here, coward. At once the newly freed man staggered to his feet and took off in a full run, as he was being chased by Kenders with whippicks. They chased him clear out to the rampart on Serindar's Rest and made him jump into the sea. To be sure, Astrid had no compunction about dealing punishment to a human criminal. Please bear this in mind to your human players, that the Kender are not children. They can be petty and immature like children, and given that proclivity, think if a human teenager was given more agency than they should, yeah. So in that sense, if you're a human, the Kender attitude can be deceiving. They aren't afraid of things normal humans would find rationally dangerous, and in that sense one making the mistake that Kender are going to act like children all the time as per your expectations is a foolish one to make if you think they are innocent and able to be manipulated or coerced like a human child into behaving a certain way, because you're an adult and bigger than them. Not with Kender. Think again. A Kender will immediately rebel against a human telling it to do literally anything. You have to ask a certain way and get the Kender to volunteer. There is an art to this, as some companions of Kender will tell you. Half of the problem is dealing with a Kender's over-emotional, often manic behavior, which can veer from happy to sad, to happy again. Kender rarely imprison or punish each other past a simple reprimand, and maybe a shouting and shoving match, which brings other Kender running to see what's amiss. Kender tend to put pressure on their peers to act accordingly. Most Kender believe that if one of them aren't happy, nobody else will be either, so they take steps to remedy any altercation before it starts. Be aware, just like any race there are exceptions. A Kender might have a fist fight with a cousin, but he doesn't leave his head bashed open. Of anyone most likely to fight with a Kender would be an actual human teenager. Of all the threats that Kender often encounter, it's much older young adults, and it's not uncommon for youths to target them. In many instances, it was a Kender defending a younger human child against much older human bullies. Kenders will still treat human teenagers with dignity and respect, but it often seems sticking up for the young and defenseless is their primary concern when they are able. The bigger kids can take care of themselves. Kender are, we repeat, not human children and can sometimes attempt things as exception to prove to a human they aren't. Kender drink alcohol, sometimes in amounts that would put a normal human under the table. Drunk Kender are prone to being exceptionally overdramatic. All the drinking also results in the Kender usually blubbering like a baby or zealously dancing around, sometimes clothing optional, the drinking establishment, with an intent on not stopping until everybody has a drink and some fun, or else they collapse in a drunken heap after several tankards. Be wary, a drunken Kender who is provoked is quick with taunts and can be an emotional mess to keep in the party if not babysat. Likewise, a Kender who is not inebriated often looks out for his friends when they are, albeit on insisting that he support his drunken friends and participate in things they aren't sober enough to do, like climb a tower. A common practice in the days of Istar in order to keep the drunken, more affluent patrons off the streets after curfew, both Istar and the city of Palanthas used to hire Kender as drunk rousters. Kender, being naturally fearless, would often be asked to merely approach passers-by and politely ask them how they were. Naturally, the drunken affluent would see a Kender and hightail it indoors to save their purses. Other meaner, more disreputable folks about at the wee hours tended to see the Kender as mosquitoes buzzing round our bonfire, and would ignore or attempt to remove them. A famous incident in the city of Istar, when a group of drunken affluent Yuletide revelers got into a fistfight with what they thought were a group of street urchins consisting of human children and Kender, who had snuck their way into a ball disguised as a Yuletide troupe. It was later discovered they were out to steal anything not tied down. The ensuing melee broke out in the banquet hall, and guards frantically started throwing any Kender they could grab out windows and downstairs, smacking butts and breaking noses. Another guard caught a Yuletide pudding in the face and scrambled behind a large table turned on its side to serve as a rampart to onslaught of objects, people, Kender, food and an actual live turkey from the kitchen, which the Kenders liberated from its cage. A horrified governor watched as the teens and Kender ran through the hallways, jeering and hooting as the guard captain angrily shoved one of the rich patrons out of the way to punch someone else and smack a Kender with his truncheon when he spied one trying to crawl beneath his legs. Before he could pinch his legs fast to hold the little bastard, the Kender nailed him in the crotch with its hoopak and scurried down the hall giggling, leaving the guard captain to grab his loins in pain. He angrily yanked another Kender, climbing into the fountain out while the Kender screamed taunts about how he stunk and needed to be the one thrown in the fountain himself. Captain, what do we do? We can't go beating the wealthy of Palantha's children. If they are caught, their parents will be humiliated. Oi, stop that little bastard. The guard ducked as another pastry came sailing past his head. Those ain't kids, those are Kenders. That's not a kid. It's a Kender. Right then, grab that little shite. Captain says it's okay to beat on 'em, they ain't kids anyway. Now this, keep in mind, this attitude commonly prevails around human adults. Human children, on the other hand, have very little to fear from a Kender. It's just when the human reaches of age, the Kenders tend to look at them less like themselves and more as humans. It's a peculiar dynamic among Kender and humans as they age. Humans who are most likely to have met a Kender during their childhood will retain them as a lifelong friend, but if they aren't that familiar with a Kender, the attitude between the two races is somewhat lukewarm. A lot of humans view Kenders as less than human, akin to a family pet or servant. They tolerate their presence. It's the wrong attitude to treat any sentient individual in this way, But just like in the real world, those prejudices do exist commonly due to ignorance or lack of empathy. Adversity builds characters, and so it goes. It's not fair and it's certainly not ideal, but it allows the player to adapt to their problems and approach any obstacles with a modicum or understanding that diplomacy and civility wins more than a closed fist. Players must understand that not everyone in the Dragonlance world is tolerable of other races, although they should all aspire to be such in order to achieve diplomacy and survive long enough to evolve past the prejudices places upon them by factors beyond their control in the Dragonlance world. Astrid's attitude towards the party will differ depending on whether any Kender are in the party, including Tars. If you traveled with Tars, she's much easier to persuade if the party is made up of humans. If Tars isn't there and Pez is with her, she will act slightly antagonistic toward any humans who fail the initial charisma or intelligence check upon their first encounter. Astrid just doesn't believe humans are up to the task of helping forge dragonlances like they claim to be. If any humans in the party annoy her, she will holler for Pez with a loud pause, at which Pez appears and jovially asks who the strongest human in the party is. If nobody steps forward, Pez proceeds to grab the nearest PC he considers looks the strongest and wrestle them to the ground until they say uncle, along with a short repeated phrase in a Gothian taught like a linguistic lesson, just to mock the offender in a humiliating way, as it is recited by Astrid as Pez gleefully attempts to hold M down and squeeze M like a snake. DM's note: it's ill-advised to let Pez lose in front of Astrid, as she will cheat and go as far as taking a beehive and throwing it at the party, then escaping only to return later with 6 of Pez boys all stocky island Kender with 2d4 plus 2 hit dice and strength of 16. Pez is the strongest Kender in Ansalon, so his stats are well above the racial limit usually allowed for Kender. Use unarmed wrestling. Rules in AD&D2 Player's Handbook. If the players survive all this, but still insist on fighting, Dalamar will show up and kill or severely injure one of the party for harassing Astrid. A fair fight and show of honor to Pez by ANY character, who beats him in whatever challenge he requests from the PC. Pez will not wrestle or fight anyone weaker than him that doesn't initiate combat. Any mage characters, he will insist they roll a few dice in a game of chance to see if they win. If they lose, Pez will admonish them for trying and take whatever valuable they have on them. If Pez loses the game of chance, he will accuse the person of cheating him, but will begrudgingly leave the characters alone after that. It is advised to not upset Astrid if PCs want to stay in good graces with Pez. If Astrid is encountered in Hylo Citadel, she will most likely request to travel with the party to Legup to deliver mail. When asked about this, she says it's official businesses and urgent. She explains to the party her bodyguard and chaperone Pez Thoroughfoot was supposed to return north to Hylo a week ago to travel with her, but somehow he didn't come back yet. A day ago, a carrier pigeon flew in with a message saying that Pez was in Manic, send help. Pez is her security and Kender man at arms. While she is sure Pez can handle himself, she is dispatching to Serindar's Rest Tavern along the trails to see if she can enlist aid from the Kronns. First, option for DM. The Kronns turn out to be none other than Cronin and Kron Thistlenot, newly returned from their campaign against the Dragon Army and defeat of Lord Toeed and his garrison in Flotsam after being routed out of Hylo first. The embarrassment of being rousted out of Hylo, to be honest, reports say that Toeed never got past Hylo port. The aims of assassins and smugglers the Dragon Army had hoped to sneak into Hylo and Gwynd were thwarted. First by Toad's inconspicuous seized treasure galleon. The vain fat bastard refused to keep a low profile. An inexplicable accident at the docks with a gnome in a seized and detained canoe carrying an immense load of explosive materials, a sneezing Kender baby and an unattended wick lamp. The result sent what was left of Toad's elite mercenary assassin group diving off the sides into the water as a massive explosion tore the ship apart. The gnome and the baby Kendling were unharmed, and the Kendling is at home with its mother, albeit she won't ask the old gnome to babysit her kid for a few steal if he keeps doing stupid stuff all the time. Toad then got shipped off to Flotsam, and to add insult to injury, was burned to a crisp by a green dragon, after Kronns lured him into a trap. The Kronns have since returned to Kenderholm, with the elder Kender being granted residence along the trails to Windseed Manor. In the recent 10 years, Kronns' son, and Serindar the elf, have become the caretakers of Serindar's Rest Tavern, an outpost overlooking Hylo's eastern coastline from a cliffside rampart. This of course leads to several bases, along the trails to Lukit and Lagup, which are distinctively called Kronns wards, which naturally maintained by Kronns wardens. They serve as the de facto law and order among the rough and tumble trails and scenery that is the great nation of Hylo. The warden's job is mainly to deter poachers and brigands, aid lost travelers, and keep Hylo and its trails safe for all who come in peace and have respect for our lands. Kender do not believe in killing an enemy unless there is no other choice. Humbling or humiliating an enemy is always first on the agenda, as an option when dealing with lawbreakers. To this end, the only capital punishment for poaching or being a nuisance by hurting people is a harsh whack on the butt with a birch cane or rod, or else before being tossed off the rampart into the Hylo Bay. The two punishments are only dealt to the most serious of offenders, mostly to humans and larger demi-humans who seek to ignore the Kender authority, because they think their size makes them children. Kender in the mountains of Hylo are extremely superstitious about the forest master of Ergoth. Humans beware, for if you hurt any animal or Kenderkin unprovoked and unjustly, the forest master will find you, and like we mentioned before, it's big, and not a unicorn. Read the following introduction to your players on your first encounter with Astrid. Astrid's first name is pronounced like pastry. Astrid is a tasty pastry. Alho. Who ist come to visit mine Kenderkin on this day? Oh. Who ist you may? Ist this a human? Ho, human. Humans have body hair. You're very tall, human. I am Kenderkin. Welcome to Hylo, Northern Ergoth. Kender in Ergoth often pronounce it as Hylo instead of Hylo, which, contrary to the origin of its name, Ergothian Kender take great pride in differentiating their cities from others. They also pronounce Ergoth as Ergot. I sees you from Abanansinia ya. My name is Astrid de Morris Trapspringer. Yes, I am Astrid. My papa is Trapspringer Furfoot. My mama is de Morris. I am their daughter, who knows the many important Kender things. These things I can tell you. I learned them at the University of Strange and Wonderful Things. It is a silly place, but serious in that we will change the world someday for the betterment of all Kenderkin. I speak in many ways. I am an Acolyte of the Chantry of Chislev and Gillian Asterisk. Alongside my duties as scribe and engineer, a great many things I know. Human. Remind the players in this part of Ergoth, Acolyte and Ackalites take on the same meaning as the church, or chantry, of three neutral deities, Chislev and Gillian, with Zivelin being recognized as the intermediary in this trinity. In Ergoth the three are paired somewhat compatibly, as a religion more amenable to NPCs, or PCs that detest the rigidity of the Solamnics, or the outright unwavering devotion to the lawful good powers of KRYNN, despite themselves being mostly absent since the Cataclysm. To this end the Kender in particular see Habakkuk, Zivelin, Chislev and Gillian as the only ones whom in their opinion, didn't abandon the races to succumb to darkness. The sun still shines and the wind still blows, and Zivelin's tree remains, and under this tree Gillian reads his book. Reorx stokes the fire, and Habakkuk sends the winds of the seas to make the branches sway. Ergoth hums with life. Ergoth is life. The whispers upon the wind bring all of what is known upon Kryn, the tree of life's branches going deep into the earth. Much power in a name, more power in a memory. The spark that never dies, the light that never goes out. When Kryn came into being, know that Ergoth itself was the apex of the beginning of all time and creation. The oldest lands on the surface of Kryn. Always before the spring returned, the earth within its cycle spun, the air and flowers, grass and fern, assured and cradled by the sun. For all intensive purposes, Kender like Astrid in Ergoth, where clothes the colours of the chantry of Chislev and Gillian. It is described as the symbol being a tree, representing Zivelin, and the tree of life, two-toned to green and gold, which represents Chislev. There is a book representing Gillian, and a hammer or gavel representing Reorx, who to the other three deities serves as an impartial judge. Hylo Kender of the Chantry insist this triumvirate is essential to their identity, as Hylo Kender, and the balance of law and order, which, surprising to most human NPCs, the definition is widely contested in Ergoth. Ergoth is the land is the law. In all things, nature, not man, rules Ergoth. They must be truthful in all things, even when dealing with thine enemies. This seems odd that Kender would even follow such a strict dictum, but they do, as they feel their belief in Chislev upholds that nature is not evil, the earth is the law. The world tree here long before all Kenderkin walk the surface of Kryn, for them Paladin and Takhisis were just newly arrived on the scene, and legend holds that their argument started a rainstorm while Gillian was trying to read his book under the great tree of Zivelin. Gillian moves under the tree for shelter, but Takhisis and Paladin were told to stay out until they could behave themselves, as Chislev was lord of his manor and felt he had say who got to make noise around there. Not to be outdone, Takhisis angrily made a bunch of storm clouds and a maelstrom of wind, shaking the great tree to its core and pelting it with hailstones and wrenching its roots out of the earth by cracking the ground open. Paladin, sorry about the commotion he caused, quickly gathered the seeds falling off the great tree and covering them with topsoil before Takhisis could angrily rip out the tree by its roots in rage. He asked the sun to come out, and flowers and grass began to grow, and Takhisis, with a huff and a final indignant scream, kicked the side of the tree, causing a giant apple to fall and hit a goatsucker bird upside its head, and to this day this is why the birds are stupid. Takhisis went home to contemplate her horrible treatment of Paladin. Gillian, pleased that Takhisis stopped kicking Zivelin's tree, invited Paladin to sit beneath the world tree and listen to tales from Gillian's book as Reorx stokes the fires to keep the stars burning to read by. On occasion Takhisis watches from the shadows and listens to the tales herself, although she never has anything nice to say. She knows of what always comes to pass. Always before the spring returned, the earth within its cycle spun, the air and flowers, grass and fern, assured and cradled by the sun, from a sermon delivered by Sister Astrid herself. In Ergoth, a common traditional way of having church is by telling a story, and Highborn Kender have no shortage of stories to tell at just about any formal occasion. These stories are sometimes made up and complete nonsense, but it doesn't stop its longevity in Kender circles. What's more, the stupider or more outlandish a story is, the more likely a Kender will embellish on a minor detail, just to make it sound more interesting. Everything from Kender going to the moon, to the time one of them found out if a woolly mammoth existed, it did. For NPCs or PCs that regard Astrid as just another Maudi Kender, or attempt to mentally spar with her in a condescending manner, Astrid will tolerate this until she decides to lure them in. I have not talked to a human before this day, but I must ask, why does a human have hair on their hiney? I not see you humans sit on the ground as elves and Kenderkin do. Your houses have chairs, your houses are warm, as such I do not understand. You do not sleep outside in a field like a cow or a horse. So why must there be hair on your butts or your legs, male human? Is't it not you are man or beast? Tread lightly here in Ergoth, lest you anger the forest master. You act as beast, and so we shall test your backside to see if this is so. If we catch you poaching our deers, or being mean to our bears, or making fun of us Kendakin, when there is hair on your face, or is that your backside? A common taunt among Kenda to reference this insult, a. Kenda will mash their lips and cheeks together with their hand to resemble, but along with this comes a farting noise followed by much spitting and waggling of fingers to emphasize something displeases them with humans. The humans say they are civilized, yet so many of you act as ogres and behave not as men, but monkeys, and so you humans know no more the things a goblin or ogre does. You laugh and jeer at the other races, say you are so very smart. But so many times I have seen beasts of Ergoth chase you away, and send you squealing for shore. Help us, O Kendakin, for we have angered the herd of world striders, heading right toward your vessel, as you stopped to watch them graze from the shoreline. Silly human, world striders see all that hair, and think you are a fuzzy kibu fruit to eat. DMs, note kibu fruit, is the Ergothian version of a kiwi. It hangs from large trees, and like the kiwi has fuzz on its outer skin. World striders will often snip off the top fruit of the tree when it buds, making it somewhat dangerous to collect if a herd is near. The movement in the branches can start a stampede if they are interrupted during their pruning. The Kenda then proceeds to recite perfect Old Salamnic, impressive in its own right, because she's a Kenda, but most Ergothians speak a variant of Old Salamnic anyway. It should be noted, like a non-English speaker getting the nuances of the language for the first time, in this case being common. Astrid punctuates her speech with certain phrases to get an idea of her cadence. Listen to Dutch, German, or Hungarian. Brother Theodore Gottlieb or Zaza. Gabber with their accents and phrasing. Astrid pronounces her first name as Astrid, and woe be the foolish human who pronounces it with a hard vowel and calls her Astrid, as this will likely result in a row of taunts and indignant contempt if she introduced herself to you prior, and then you make the mistake of mispronouncing her first name. A small high-pitched, but heavily accented voice comes trailing up the path. You look to see a small and pretty, but very stout and well-fed Kenda maid with blonde hair and slightly almond-shaped green eyes, with porcelain skin, but a smattering of freckles across her nose. At the moment she is dressed in a cleanly starched embroidered green, gold, and brown robe with a small wide-brimmed hat that was pointed like a wizard, but slightly rounded at the top. Around this was draped half a peach cloth shawl with a purple tassel, held in place with a brooch. You hear the clack asterisk of her little wooden sabot shoes on the cobbles, as she steps forth and gives a polite curtsy. Given her speech patterns, it doesn't sound like common is her first language, but when she sees the party and notices if any of them are human, Astrid seizes immediately upon them with questions. Astrid has never actually talked to a human, she's heard of them. Astrid will inspect each member of the party, first asking their name, then asking a random question, to which if she doesn't get an immediate intelligent answer, she seizes on the opportunity to call them a baby and move on to the next member. If she's satisfied with their answers, she will inquisitively ask more questions. But if the PCs fail the initial encounter checks for INT or CHA, she will regard that party member as stupid and condescendingly refer to them as a child from then on. Gifts may persuade Astrid to change her mind, but outright being disingenuous or snarky towards her being a Kender is met with mutual regard as an idiot. An initial question from Astrid would be first to ask how they correctly pronounce Hylo and Ergoth. This is important, as you will later find out. What do you call our fair homeland where
Alright guys, I'm back. This is the point where I have to take over. Even though I like the text-to-speech thing, it kind of is oxymoronic in the way that we're talking about this, because, see, she keeps pronouncing Astrid Astrid's name. It's Astrid. But, Astrid, when you're talking to Astrid, you would say Astrid. Astrid, like pastry. Okay, because the idea of the joke among the DMC, I thought of this as a gimmick too. This is something that would be funny because they would keep calling her Astrid, and Astrid would get pissed off because they said it. It's Astrid! My name is Astrid, I'm taking pastry! She'd squeal like a little girl and get pissed off. And then, it's Astrid! You silly human, stupid fun coming! I tell you, it's Astrid! That's funny as fuck. I don't care. Okay. Yeah, because it's not going to read out. If the characters pronounce it Hylo, like most people from Abyssinia are apt to do, as Astrid makes a face, and so does Pez, and she starts giggling. Hylo? What you say, human? Hylo. Is to say, Hylo. Astrid laughs like the tingling of little bells. Bear in mind that Astrid is sweet and good-natured, but will immediately resort to a harsh, shrill squeal if a human interrupts her or acts condescendingly to her questions. We'll let it continue, but I had to interject there just for that.
Where you come from, human. Astrid will wait to see how the first NPC, or PC, pronounces Hylo. If the characters pronounce it Hylo, like most people from Abyssinia are apt to do, Astrid makes a face, and so does Pez, and she starts giggling. Hylo. What you say, human? He loh. Ist you say, he loh. Astrid laughs like the tinkling of little bells. Bear in mind that Astrid is sweet and good-natured, but will immediately resort to a harsh, shrill squeal if a human interrupts or acts condescendingly to her questions. If a PC interrupts her at any point while she is talking, she makes a harsh little squeal or intermittent peep at the offending person until they shut up, or Pez rudely makes them pay attention in a most subtle way. He stomps on feet and has a habit of smacking the back of your hand with his large palm, and it will literally bring a grown man to their knees. He's an Abbas. Pez agrees. He's not a Flotsamite neither, he's a landlubbing Abbas. The distinction between Ergothian Kender and Goodland Kender is evident. Flotsam and Balifor, for what they are, being the only inland seaports usable, have Kender that are mostly familiar with marine life and living on the ocean. Goodland Kender, near Kendamore, or elsewhere in Abyssinia, are colloquially called Abbas, not to be confused with the prefix Pez often uses mibar to describe a friend. Attitudes among the Ackalites and cast-offs of the Ergothian Empire, viewed as pirates and brigands in the best of light in Flotsam and Balifor, often hold a resentment to what they call landlubbers, or in general anyone from Abyssinia who isn't aware of local traditions. Most Ergothian Kender are familiar with maritime customs. Astrid de Morris and her family in Hylo are also referred to as Highborns, and in some regard have the same stigma held against them, being transplants arriving on a citadel that crashed in Hylo before the cataclysm. True Ergothian Kender tend to wear their hair shorter, as well as dress very different from the traditional vest, leggings, and tunic combo seen in mainland Ansalon, which has its very origins in Old Kenderhome, and as such the Citadel Kender brought the oldest of the Kender traditions to Hylo when they arrived, but for the island Kender the interference of the chantry, or the edicts issued by a human emperor, was not enough to deter Highborns and island Ackalites alike from living distinctly separate from Goodland or Goodalubber Kenders in every aspect. The Highborns retain their Ergothian accents and dialects, and pronounce and do things differently from Ansalonian Kender, even though they themselves are not native to Ergoth. The Highborns, it should be noted, do not treat their Ergothian hosts like second-class citizens. The Kender from Flotsam and Balifor seem to be more xenophobic and wary of Kender from anywhere else but Hylo. The somewhat newly arrived Kronns, Thistleknots, and Trapsringers from Kendamore has brought an air of prestige to Hylo. Some welcome Kronn and Kronn as the second coming of Balif. Others in Hylo simply see them as upstarts from Abernanthinia coming to Hylo to fill their pouches, after fighting a war against a lazy hobgoblin too fat to lift his froggy ass off the ground. Some like them, but the majority of the Kender around the environs of Windseed Manor, and all points north and south up the trails of Hylo consider them to be an overbearing gang that pretty much runs the forest and trails with an iron stave of a hoopak and an attitude to match. Their job is to keep the trails and roads free of bandits and monsters, as a regiment and small standing army ready at a minute's notice to defend all Kenderhome and its wildlife from poachers. Kronn Thistleknot is described as a Kender with short minnow silver hair and the air of a little Kender drill sergeant. His eldest son Kronn is hot-tempered, somewhat arrogant, and without Serindar to keep him on an even keel can be a bully to other Kenders if he thinks they aren't pulling their weight or doing their jobs, which as he puts it, shut your pie hole and know your role. Serindar frequently has to make sure Kronn does not overstep his desire to ensure absolute loyalty and fealty to his father, does not override treating people like individuals instead of resources or commodities to be used to make them look better. Tasselhoff's topknot in Ergoth was somewhat of an oddity for the natives when the boy travelled with his parents. Long hair and no beads to designate where Y.A. been. Many ages ago a young Tars met Pez Thoroughfoot in a Balifor tavern. At the time the local pirates and brigands had converted an warehouse long since fallen into disrepair into an alehouse, an impromptu obstacle course, with plenty of dangerous traps and people in a sort of pit maze, where onlookers above could bet on the players below. Some volunteer, and some, shall we say, are not sanctioned to be there but coerced or forced to participate. Tars earned Pez respect when his quick and nimbleness paid off in the mazes. He avoided 6 other opponents and didn't get a scratch. He even surprised Kitiara and Stum. You didn't get squashed in the maze for running that big mouth, Kender. I am impressed. Kitiara admonished him at the time. Raistlin and Kaamorn were too young to travel outside of Solace back then, but of the many adventures the companions had, a tale for another time is to be told involving Flint, Kitiara, Tanis, and a very young Stum. A convenient, lost weekend, from reading a magic scroll landed them in Balifor. A weekend full of debauchery, and Tars under no certain terms was completely innocent in his involvement. We'll leave it at that. It's the other story Tars swore on his topknot and Flint's beard and Stum's just growing in facial hair, he wouldn't tell. Currently the Hylo homeland has recently become reoccupied for a time to welcome home Kronn Thistleknot and his heir and son Kronn the Thistleknots, while originally being from Balifor, had armed Kendamore shortly after the dragon armies had attempted to launch a full-scale assault on the Kender homeland. Ergoth was not yet a target and barely saw any mention of the dragon army during the War of the Lance, logistics being too remote and too wild and barren to be of any logistical use except around its coasts. An ill-fated entourage from the White Dragon Army attempted to land spies north off the coast of Gwynd. This party succumbed to the frantic stampede of Ergothian worldstriders on their migratory herd movements. Ergoth has not been friendly to Draconians of late, and rather precarious, as the party of well-armed Sivak and Capac Legion that arrived to investigate the previous demise of the aforementioned Draconian cult who were squashed during the Spelljammer crash, also succumbed to Ergoth's tumultuous flora and fauna. Lord Toeed embarrassingly watched his captured treasure galleon explode and sink to the bottom of Hylo Harbour in a fantastic shower of sparks and confusion. Such an embarrassment it was to the Dragon Army, it was never mentioned in official reports.
Okay, guys, let's see here. I've been going for about 2 hours now. Okay, and counting. Dang, right at 2 hours. Dang. All right. Slick, I'm good. Alright, guys, let's go to. Ah! Sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty good. Guys, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Like I said, most of the reason why I haven't been on is because of my health and because of all the BS that's going on in the world. And you know, when I'm aggravated and I ain't got much to say, I don't do a whole lot of social media or streaming or anything. Uh, all I can say is, like I said, you know, people are entitled to their own opinions. Please don't get interpersonal with people. I noticed on, well, like I said, you know, fuck Facebook, fuck social media. Guys, you're just going to have to intend that there's some people you would like to have a report with, and it's just not in the cards. Poor Tracy Hickman, bless him, you know, and you know Tracy's sentiments about what's going on now, okay? Not to get it, not to, even if you disagree with what he says. I noticed there's a lot of people who followed Tracy for the prestige and stuff, and now, you know, they're kind of like trying to tear him apart because he's speaking his mind about what's going on. Okay, it's kind of like the John Prine song. Jesus don't like killing no matter what the reason's for. You know, and your flag decal won't get you into heaven anymore. I don't know if Tracy Hickman's a John Prine fan, but, you know, like I said, he's not really making it as a political statement, but, you know, he posts a lot of common sense stuff. And I understand his sentiment toward it. I don't agree with it either. There's a lot of people, though, on his feed, and see, you can't really comment on it unless you're on his friends list. But there's a lot of people on his friends list, I guess, that were there, you know, not knowing from the man, the or maybe games with him, whatever, that's his business. But I've noticed, you know, they want to argue. A lot of times it's some of the worst people are people you related to sometimes, or people you went to school with. It's even fucking worse, okay? The idea is, guys, though, please don't get so interpersonal with these people. Please don't let that affect your enjoyment of this hobby. Okay? What you think of me should have no bearing on the material. Okay? As long as the material is accurate to a point and I haven't kind of slathered all over it, there's too much of me in it to be, you know, feasibly recognized or usable at a gaming table. Use what you need and discard the rest. Okay? Don't think of me or anybody else when you're playing Dragonlance other than the fact of what they put on the page. Okay? That's all the hell they ever wanted. Margaret and Tracy really don't write or read other people's Dragonlance. Okay? They write theirs. And that's it. And that's something that you guys gotta get it through your heads. Okay? Now, that doesn't really have anything to do with what I was talking about earlier in the show with that person that was dismayed. That was something completely different. That was somebody who had been blocked by somebody on Twitter. They had just to rehash, okay, they were upset that something that they followed and some favorite creator or whatever got really city with them because they let their little mouth run a little bit too much and figured out somebody showed their true colors and got blocked. Okay, like I said, they got too interpersonal with somebody, and you know they that went back to bite them in the butt. Okay, I've seen that happen to people. It's happened to me. Okay, that's why you don't do it. Okay, but the idea is, guys, if you bought a book or you watch a TV show or you watch a movie, your enjoyment should have nothing to do with the interpersonal relations of what that actor or that person may be in real life. They may be a complete freaking asshole, insufferable in all points that you cannot get along with them. And that isn't a mark on you, and it may not necessarily be a mark on them. Okay? There's people you'd like to have a rapport with, and it's just not in the cards. Sometimes I feel like a broken record. I'm pretty sure you all have heard me say this stuff during other streams, but sometimes I feel like I need to have to say it just to repeat it for myself. Okay? Maybe you're just picking up a stream and you're getting into the hobby, and you're kind of getting disparaged by all this stuff of people in the hobby that are using it for other purposes. Okay? I'm not going to name any names. Don't need to name any names. You as an active adult can buy, play, and watch and listen to who you want, and you can have at your gaming table who you want. Okay? I have nothing against the 5e players. I don't even have anything against the LGBTQ crowd. I know these people. They're some of my people too. But I don't like the damn Sparkle Troll contingent. Okay? I still despise those people. I do. Okay? But like I said, you can have at your gaming table who you want to game with. Okay? You don't have to be on par with me. If you like Dragonlance, take me out of it. Okay? Alright? There's plenty of people out there picking up Dragonlance and reading it every day. Alright? And if you don't like the newer stuff coming out, there's always the older stuff to go back on. I think that it needs some new writers. Okay? I think some more people need to get into it. And we need to come up with some stuff. Now, like I said, I want to develop, if anybody you all out there that are doing anything as far as software related with like DOS or anything like these revives and stuff, I want to do something akin to Solasta. Not necessarily the 3.5 rule set, but I was thinking maybe that you could switch up the rule set when you play it, so you could either do it to 2E rule set and stats. You see what I'm getting at? 3.5. Or you could have a download package that lets you play the 5E. Okay? Somebody's converted all up to 5E. But anyways, but I wanted to do it and call it Dragonlance Tactics. Okay? And it literally takes the board aspect of it and uses the original Dragonlance modules. You see what I'm getting at? And you could play it out like Solasta, but you could use Dragonlance. Okay? That's what I want to do. I want to do it, and I want to call it Dragonlance Tactics. Now, regardless of what you think about me or the material, I care about Dragonlance. Okay? If somebody else has got the resources to do this, then do it. Okay? Get your butt out there and do it. Okay? I'm not saying that I'm the smartest man in the room either. Only time I ever got something right was because I probably screwed it up the first time. But if it didn't kill me, I learned from it, and I got back up, and I kept at it. All right, guys. We've just hit the, I think it was like the 2-hour, 10-minute mark, something like this. It's getting a little long. I'm going to go ahead and clip it off at least for this. Might get back on a little bit later and play a game or something, but I'm going to go ahead and put this off in a nice segment because it's got to be ported over to YouTube anyway. It was mostly for the updated Welcome to Hylo, Welcome to Northern Ergoth segment. That's mostly what I did it for, and for the Kinder. And incidentally, guys, if anybody gives you shit about Kinder, tell them to quit projecting their sick bullshit onto your hobby or game, okay? That's something else, too, okay? Don't let people project their bullshit onto your hobby, okay? That's in their heads, okay? You're not responsible for their version that they have in their little head of whatever the fuck you got going on, alright? Tell people to mind their own fucking business. I mean, seriously. If you can't deal with them, get the hell away from them. But hopefully, guys, I'm hoping that you all can see it rise above that and treat people a little bit better. You know, there's no reason as to why you should let somebody's political opinion get you in a tussle, since they've already fucked it up as bad as they can anyway. But you need to enjoy yourself and do what makes you happy. Get away from toxic people. Okay? This hobby in itself is perfect for that. You will find, though, that being able to assemble people enough to be able to do it is a miracle within itself. However, I have found that learning how to solo game, it works well. Because, one, it makes you a better dungeon master. See, you have to articulate this and think about this stuff in your head. If you'll actually play through this stuff and then do down play reports, see, this is what I'm getting into learning how to doing. Okay, and once I start doing it, I start typing it out and putting it down on paper. And once again, when I run it through on stream or in front of people, it actually looks like I know what I'm talking about, and I'm not trying to pull it out of my butt. I'm getting better. I'm trying. But like I said, if I'm not ready for prime time, I'll probably lay off of it until I am. Okay? But also, for any of you watching, my content is 100% OGL. Okay? If you like any of it or want to use it for your own table, please do so. Okay? Stuff's been around for about 40 years. Okay? All I ask is you give me a little mitigation of credit. I'm not talking about monetized. My channel is not monetized. Just give me a little bit of credit for it. If you think it'll draw heat, though, you don't have to mention me. Okay? It's not a big deal. I'm becoming less and less making this about me and making more about Dragonlance. Okay? Anything else be damned. Okay? I'm not trying to be a personality. I'm just a face. But that's it. You know, I care about the Dragonlance. Noticed I switched up the thing and put it to Raceland and Takesis there on the outro thing. But anyways, guys, I want to thank you guys for watching. Next time around I get back in, I'll set up my table. Currently, I'm playing through something where I thought of what if Kitiara and Tanis made it back to the meeting at the end, but Raceland and Cameron didn't make it back in. And Flint is ill, and Taz is taking care of Flint, and Flint saw Sturm being captured by Draconians and taken off to Pax Arcus. It's an alternate beginning to Dragons of Autumn Twilight. Yeah. It's nuts, is all I can describe it as. I'm just playing through some stuff, going through some little stuff. Alright, guys. I'm going to move this around for just a bit. Oh, I can't move it over too damn much. Crap. I'm trying not to get this thing to fall over. Smoke you another one, goofball. Alright. This thing lights up. Oh, shit. I gotta get over it with the cabinet or it's gonna fall. I gotta get around this chair. Oh boy. But yeah, it's my case that I put my miniatures in. It's my dragon orb. You've seen that many a time. Many, many, many a time. I always thought about where I need to put it, though. I put it on the reflective surface over here, but well, you got to watch because this thing will roll right out of the base and then in the hook. That base is not stable. I'm probably blocking the view. I'm just looking at to see what it looks like on stream. For next time when I stream, I don't know, it probably looks better off to the side there. I won't worry about it. Piss on it. Alright. I'm going to clip the lights on this for a minute. Alright. Kill the light on that one. Oh, that looks nice, don't it? We're just having a look-see here. This is the outro, guys. Okay. Now, hold on a minute, and I'm going to reach in here and see what this looks like here. Oh, shit. I got this light in the way, and my hands don't work my arms and hands don't work like normal people's anymore, guys, due to this fucking illness. I'm about ready to drop Darkfire out of his damn thing, and I can't get... That door is glass. I don't want it to slam on nothing. Alright, I gotta do this by feel. There it is. Ta-da! Hot damn. There it is. What you think of that? Pretty cool, bit by bit. Oh. Alright, guys. Damn, that looks nice. I like that. Look at that. Oh, yeah. I'm sitting here looking at it on my stream feed here. Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. That does look nice. See, guys, that's mostly what I'm doing. I measure it out to see how it looks on stream. Oh, that is so nice. Oh, that is so nice. That is so damn nice. Okay, wait a second. I'm going to try something here. All right, so... Well, that's right. This will pivot over this way. That's right. This will pivot over this way. I'm put my ring light off to the side there. Oh, yeah, I can. Just to use the... Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Ain't bad. I guess it is what it is. That bluer lighting. Just checking the lighting, guys. Oh, no, I do not have an extra monitor set up. I should. I need to get one. I know I do. I know I do. Okay, what else we want to do here? I guess we want to make sure that all my hell no, because then I got to pull up GOG for that. So that's not going to work. All right, well, we won't worry about it then. Let's see what we got. We're okay. We're okay. All right. Do. That's back when I had a whole bunch of deals that they sent me bags of dice, man. Yeah. I ordered those off of Amazon. Okay, it's just my markers and stuff. Alright, guys. Yep. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I'll try to get back on when I have something worth talking about. Oh, I've got some stuff. Matter of fact, yeah, I do. I've got, like I said, it's been up and down for me. Most of it's because I've been in my health. But I've got some more stuff to run on the Scriborium side for... I was going to run some more Dragon Magazine issues today, too. Wait a minute. Wait just a second. No, we're not done. No, we're not done. Hold on just a second. Let me see if it's still here. Was it? I think it was. Let's see. Yeah, it was. Okay, hold on just a second here, guys. Hold on just a second here, guys. Bear with me a second. I'll pull it up. All right, we're going to close this one. Okay. And we're going to... Yeah, hold on just a second here, guys. I'll bring this up. I thought of I would while I'm thinking about it, and I got it fresh on my mind. It extends the stream a little bit, but hold on just a second. Hey, look at that. And it pops right up. Sweet. Sweet. I just had to learn how to do it. Alright. I guess it has to be cued in. Whatever. Okay, what you're looking at here, guys, this is Dragon Magazine. This is issue number 84 or 94. Yep. Okay. What's cool is the cover, yes. But what is also significant is the date on this thing. Yeah, My Honor's My Life, Tracy Hickman, background for Dragonlance campaign, The Knights of Solamnia. Okay, that's what this appeared in. Okay, this was when, yeah, this is February of 1985. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, Dragonlance is just being squeezed out. Early, early, early. Yeah, this is the ad. Huh. The first ad for Dragonlance, Dragons of Autumn Twilight. Okay, this is when it was being put out. Okay, that says 1984, so it'd been. I don't think this was the first time. I don't know what issue that it was first printed in. If one of y'all want to look that up and find out what issue that this ad was first printed in, I'd find it out sometime in 1984. But some of the first articles that Tracy and them started putting out. My Honor is My Life, all about the Knights of Solamnia. I know, y'all. I say I'm going to fucking leave and I don't. I'm like a kinder. Y'all turn this out. I got to go poo. Well, I didn't, so meh. Nah, we're going to have to, roll it out about the 2:30 mark because that gets a little long. And that's longer than it has to process, so I try not to let my streams go past 3 hours. You can't sit through 3 hours of that, guys, unless I've got something rolling really good. I try not to do that, especially if I'm going to port it to YouTube. Alright, we're going good, we're okay. I'm just looking to see if you can see it. Think audio read it out? I'll let it do it if it'll do it, but I don't think it's going to. I'm not going to do that. But it's only like 2 pages. I'll scroll it slow so you can look at it. You can pause the video and have a look. But no, I share the same sentiment that Tracy does. Okay? The shit that's going on right now is ridiculous, and I'll leave it at that. Now, if that kind of puts some of y'all off and say, well, look, you can only put up with so much shit with people in your front yard. And I was noticing about that, He's got people, that are supposed to be his friends, that aren't respecting him and they're supposed to be his friends, and complete strangers on the other hand, who gives a damn what a complete stranger thinks, but when your friends don't have any respect for you, good grief, so. Like I said, you have to let people. You can't be so interpersonal with people. You got to let them be their own people. You got to let them go their own way. And you'll find out that a lot of people, they chase clout until it's time to call them out. And that's really sad. I don't do that to anybody. There's some people that I don't get along with on an ideological basis, but I let it roll, okay? And I think a very wise man who used to once sit in this room before it was my room once said to me, what somebody thinks of me ain't none of my damn business. And I agree. I agree 100%, guys. But I wish everybody, hopefully to endure, get along. Margaret and Tracy Hickman, I hope we've got you around for a couple more years. I hope me saying anything doesn't jinx you. I try to keep my mouth shut. All right? I've never met either one of you. I think it'd probably be best that I remain a fan. They say don't meet your heroes. You don't need to meet your heroes. You don't necessarily need to take windy walks with your heroes. Don't put people on a pedestal that you don't know or you don't have an interaction or a knowing with. You know, read the book, enjoy it for what it is, and be entertained. But please don't get pissy when they don't echo the same sentiments you do. That's it. That's all you can do. But like I said, I agree with a lot of what Tracy posts, so it doesn't bother me a bit. And Margaret don't give a shit what the fuck you think. She doesn't read other people's Dragonlance. She'll take that little red editor's pen and hurt your fucking feelings. And that's only if you pay her. Ugh, you hurt your little feelings, little boy. Okay, anyway, enough sucking up. Alright, anyways, guys, yeah, I'm getting kind of thin and lanky. My health is... I'm trying to keep up and keep rolling, but like I said, I had an infusion yesterday. My weight goes up and down. I try to eat. I try to get along, but, you know, it is what it is. I've got my hair, so I accidentally burnt some of it when I was trying to check the wood stove. Hey, I'm blind on this side. What can I do? But anyways, guys, thank y'all for tuning in. This is Engine Joe. Y'all, roll on. We'll get through this. Endure. Alright? Even if the fucking country blows up and falls apart. Turn it off, read a book. Hunker down. It's all we can do. You know? Internet's not everything. And sometimes you only count your friends on one hand. You know? Sometimes people only follow clout until it's time to call them out. All you can do is try to avoid those toxic people. Alright? Alright, guys. May the roads that you walk always be sunny and at least travelable. That's my kinder saying. And stealing shit will get you locked up. So my kinder trait is profanity. Alright, guys. Y'all be good. This is Engine Joe. Y'all roll on.